All right, hello once again, Jeff Scott of Rankin Technical College, and as part of the Rankin Technical College Application and Website Development, or AWD1111 database-driven web development class, I'm doing a series of video presentations that are based on some of the PDF documents from Mr. Flavio Copes in his The Valley of Code website. So far I have done 5 presentations on his HTML handbook, 10 on his CSS handbook, and 4, this will be the 5th, for his JavaScript handbook. These are all client side. When we get done, we'll move over to the server side and look at his Node.js handbook and his React handbook. All right. So I'm jumping around in here a little bit, but now I'd like to talk about objects. So any value that's not a primitive is an object. When you define an array, you use brackets. When you define an object, you use curly braces. All right? Or you can use the new object syntax, just like you can use the new array. I don't know why you'd want to use something like that because it's a lot more typing, but you can if you're so inclined. Okay. Also, you can use object.create. The only one I ever use is this one. To me, it makes the most sense to use that one. You can also initialize an object using the new keyword before a function with a capital letter. This function serves as a constructor. In there, we can initialize the arguments we receive as parameters. So again, what this basically does is this is the constructor. How do I know that? Well, the name of the object is car. So when I say function car with a capital, that's assuming that when I create a new car, I'm going to pass in 2 values, a brand and a model. Whatever I pass in for the brand will be set to, for basically that variable, and that'll be the model variable. So this is what I'm talking about. Now, a key thing in here, when you look on the screen, right now says objects are always passed by reference. All right? And what that means is, since they're passed by reference, any change you make is a permanent change. So here's a car, let's see. So what we're doing here, when we say const another car equal car, these are now both pointing to the same variable. So even though another car is the one we changed and car was originally blue, car is now yellow because again, they're both pointing to the same thing. Objects have properties and methods. All right, properties are what you think they are. So the value of a property can be any type, be it an array, a function, even another object. But here's an example. That's the color property, so it is a key value type of thing. So the name of the property is color and its value is blue. If you want to include a character not valid in a variable name, you've got to put quotes around it. So the color, since there's a space, you'd have to put quotes around it. Just don't do that. You're fine. You can retrieve the value of a property using 2 different ways. This is the one I use virtually 100% of the time. The name of the object dot the name of the property. The other one is the name of the object and then in brackets the name of the property. If you access an unexisting property, so something that isn't there, you will get the undefined value. All right, so we don't have anything called brand. Objects can have nested properties, so it can have a property within a property if you need that. All right, so brand has got a name, so to get into it, you've got to go 2 levels deep, car.brand.name. Now these are very simplistic examples, which again, as far as I'm concerned, is just fine. All right, I didn't want to spend an inordinate amount of time on this. All right. So objects have methods, and those are behaviors basically. So here we've added a method. We've added a start method to our car. And all it is it'll just log out when we call that started. We could do other things in there that, for example, would call brake or accelerate or whatever. All right. Notice in here, inside a method defined using the function, we have access to the object using the this. All right. So this is going to basically end up saying when we call this, it should say Ford Fiesta or started Ford Fiesta. All right, a little more. They talk about arrow functions. We're going to hit on that in just a couple minutes. All right, classes. Now, back in the olden days, like up to a few years ago, when you worked with objects in JavaScript, you worked with what was typically called prototypes. There was a nice thing about it, and that was you could go and add stuff to an object at any time. The bad news, if you'd call it that, is the fact that you did not handle object-oriented in JavaScript like you did in other languages like Java or C#. So now you can actually create classes. All right. So, for instance, you could do something like this. And you end up creating something like this. This looks similar in nature to the way you would do it in C# or in Java. You are instantiating or creating a new person object that will be called Flavio. And finally, I think this is the last thing that's in here, and it is. With inheritance, a class can extend another class. The cool thing is, this is exactly the way that you do it in Java as opposed to JavaScript. You use the extends keyword. Now, if you're working on that in C#, you use the colon. So, all right. So that'll be it for this. When I come back, and I'm not even going to come back, it's only 8 minutes in. So let's jump into the next part, which looks like pages 29 through 35. So let's jump back to page 29. And start talking a little bit about functions. All right. JavaScript program, as it says, basically in any program of any depth whatsoever, everything happens inside a function, or if the function is inside of a class, it's referred to as a method. Now, this is Cope's definition of a function. It's a block of code that's self-contained. I don't disagree with that, but I would add a little more to it. It's a self-contained block of code that ideally, basically does one operation. All right. Function can be run at any time by invoking it, by giving it its name. Functions can have arguments. Even if there are no arguments, you always need the parentheses. All right. As it says, when you pass an argument, you invoke the function passing parameters. So if this is expecting 2 arguments, then you give them to them. Now again, remember that JavaScript is very liberal. So if it's expecting a color and an age, and you pass green and 24, that's fine. If you pass 24 and green, it's going to think that the color is 24 and the age is green. Sooner or later, you can get burnt with something like that. You can check if a value is not defined using a conditional, the type of. Okay, there's other ways that you can do it. They explain that in here as well. You can assign a return value to a variable when you invoke a function. All right, so what's the difference? Well, you're creating a brand new variable there, and you're assigning the return value of get data to that. What is that? It's high. So it's going to take the string high, and assign it to result. Or high with an exclamation point, I guess. You can only return one value from a function. So if you need to return more than one thing, you put it into an object or into an array. All right. That's pretty much it here. Now, when I get back, because I know this is a very short presentation, but I'm going to go over, start on the material here on arrow functions, and go through most of the rest of the chapter here, all right, that I haven't already covered. I want to talk about arrow functions, and I want to talk about async and await, and about promises, and about callbacks. So I'll be back with that shortly.